Well, hello, and welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. It is June 19th, and we are finding ourselves in Proverbs chapter 19 today, studying the words of Solomon and other authors of Proverbs as we attempt to not only learn wisdom from the scriptures, but also apply that wisdom to our lives so that we can live wiser lives daily. For those around us in our own life, our family, our children, our parents, our brothers and sisters, and our community at large. Proverbs 19 is full of many great proverbs, as are all the chapters of Proverbs. And so I encourage you to go and read Proverbs 19 by yourself, maybe with your family. Read it at the dinner table as a time of devotion, or highlight a few verses to spend discussing with your spouse, a friend, or a child. I'm going to look at a couple of verses here this morning. Verse 1 says, "Better is a poor person who walks in integrity than one who is crooked in speech and is a fool." And so the scriptures really give us this opportunity to see that what the world considers successful is not always what God considers success. Often the scriptures, especially Proverbs, speaks about wealth, speaks about prosperity, speaks about the growing slowly of resources by the righteous individual. But Proverbs also speaks quite heavily against the quick gathering of resources through ways that are not correct. And so what we see here is that it is better to have little but hold and possess our integrity than it is to have lots but have lost our integrity along the way. In a New Testament verbiage, we would say that it is not good to gain the world and lose your soul in the process. What does this look like? Well, sometimes this looks like needing to say no to potential opportunities because they actually are not full of integrity. And therefore, they might give us quick, immediate gains, but the trade-off that we pay is actually a crooked path that causes us to be a fool. In the book of Proverbs, we also see that the one who walks with integrity walks blamelessly, but the one who walks with crooked paths or a lack of integrity will be found out by the Lord. Proverbs 19 challenges us in this concept of what it looks like to walk with integrity, even when integrity feels like it's diminished our opportunities in the present moment. But another thing that Proverbs does, and I encourage you to think of as well, is a long-term direction of this. Yes, we might have quick growth when we do things that are not full of integrity, but we have sustained experiences when we walk through integrity and walk with integrity regularly. Time will tell or how our walk of integrity is doing. And unfortunately, time tells, but also about our lack of integrity. If you can think of a situation in your life where time has spoken as to whether or not you were the one of integrity in, say, a dispute or a disagreement between you and a friend or you and a coworker, you see how integrity has this long view of health, even though it might feel like a diminishing in the moment. So I want to encourage you today, in the decisions that you're making, choose a path of integrity. Desire without knowledge is not good, it says in verse 2, and whoever makes haste with their feet misses the way. And I think that this is an interesting thing, that we can have desires but be missing the knowledge piece, and that this is not good. What we see here is Solomon is not determining whether or not our desires are right or wrong in this verse. He is actually stating that desires without knowledge, without a plan, without strategy, without purpose, without knowing what the Lord is doing is not good. There's this continuum that I've heard of learning, and it's unawareness, awareness, then we have our time of learning, and then we have our time of proficiency. And for so many of us, we go from unaware to aware, and we believe that to be proficient. I didn't know I could do this thing. Now I've learned I have this skill, and now I think I'm the bee's knees at it. But really, unawareness to awareness is a significant jump to make. But now from that point forward, we need to put in the work, the practice, the effort of having the desire, making the decision, and learning so that we can become proficient in the things that we are now aware of. And so what I see here is that desire without knowledge is not good. Let us be a people who, when we experience desire, we also seek the knowledge that goes along with it. There was a time in my life where I desired to be a landlord, but I had no knowledge on how to be a landlord, and I ended up making a lot of mistakes in that process. I've learned a lot because of those mistakes that I made, and based on desires in that capacity again, I've learned a lot in that process that hopefully in a future opportunity, I would make better decisions than I did previously. All of us have had stories where our desire has outpaced our knowledge. And we need desire to encourage and to spur on our growth of knowledge. And sometimes we need to kind of have that burned experience to look back at our desires, reassess them, but then approach them from a place of knowledge. So I encourage you in the desires that God has placed upon your heart, in the desires that you're pursuing, first off, ensure that they are desires that God has placed there. And secondly, seek wisdom and knowledge. Now, a hesitation and a fear, an opportunity that I would speak just to you right now is another phrase that I've heard is analysis paralysis. This happens when we have a desire and we are trying to gain knowledge, but we're afraid that we don't have enough knowledge, so we never try anything. We never have the ability to succeed or the ability to fail because we never start because of analysis paralysis. There is a great balance between what it looks like to go from unaware to aware, have our desires and our time of learning to proficiency. But learning and proficiency are actually actions, not just theory and brain work. And so if God has placed a desire on your heart, we should be reading, we should be praying. Please don't neglect those things, but also put into practice that what you're doing. That is why we read Proverbs every day and why I discuss it every Wednesday, is so that we can apply these words and practice them. And I'll tell you, firstly here, I mess up and make mistakes on some of those application points that I even speak about sometimes. And not because I'm trying to be hypocritical, but the reality is we don't always get it every single time. And we make the mistake and then we have the chance to learn from it. So whoever makes haste with their feet will miss the way. I encourage you to be restful in the desires and precise in the application of them as you go. And when you make a mistake, be willing to acknowledge that and turn around. My last part of this turns to verse 21. It says, many are the plans in the mind of a man, but it is the purposes of the Lord that will stand. Psalm 33:11 says that God's purposes remain from generation to generation. They are unchanging. 1 Peter says that God is slow, but not in the way that you and I understand slowness. He is purposed and patient for salvation to exist in people's lives. Many are the plans in your mind and my mind. And the more opportunities we see, the more plans we try to conceive. But it is the purposes of the Lord that will stand. I've shared this with my church before, and I'm sharing it with you now. Maybe you've heard it in another Wisdom Wednesday video in the past. But there is a great question that I ask myself whenever opportunities arise. And that is this a distraction or is this destiny? There are many plans in my head that are distracting, that are unnecessary and take up time and energy from the things that God has actually called me to. And then there are many thoughts in my head that are actually what God has called me to, and I call those destiny. And I don't mean preordained necessarily, but I mean they are the things that I believe God has called me to, and therefore I should pursue them with all intention because it is God's purpose in my life. Friends, along this road of desire, of unawareness to the awareness of desire, the attempts of practice and into proficiency while gaining knowledge, but not losing our way in hastiness, I want to encourage you to ask this question. Is this distraction, or is this destiny? And what does that look like? What does it mean to pursue the heart of Jesus in each situation and the heart and desires he's placed in us as we follow him? These are some big questions. I encourage you to wrestle through them, jot them down on a piece of paper, think about them as you assess opportunities. Thank you so much for joining me for Wisdom Wednesday on June 19th. I'm excited to spend some time with you next week again. God bless, and we will talk to you then.